Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give this another minute or two before we get started here, just to make sure everyone who wants to be attending can get in. So thanks for joining. All right, I think we can get started today. Welcome, everyone. Glad you could join us for today's webinar on how to leverage AI to create efficiencies with your invoice-to-pay process. I'm Sam Maxwell, part of the marketing team here at MHC, and I'll be facilitating today's discussion. With us is our speaker, David Leonard, who will be introduced shortly. First, just going over some housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and attendees will receive a follow-up email with the link to the recording on our website. All participants are muted to prevent background noise, so please type in any questions you may have into the Q&A section. Exciting news is all MHC webinars are approved via IOFM to give one continuing education credit for all attendees. This certificate will be sent out one day after the webinar. Also, there's a post-webinar survey that will appear when the webinar ends. Please use this survey to let us know how we're doing and to request any additional information, just so an MHC resource can follow up with you. We appreciate that feedback. Awesome. David, I will now hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon or good morning based on where you're calling in from. I'm looking forward to the next 20-25 minutes to elaborate a little bit on how AI can further increase efficiencies in various areas of the invoice-to-pay process as organizations such as your own continue to look for ways to maximize automation and have personnel working on more value-added tasks and create a best-in-class AP department. Before doing so, allow me to share a little bit more about my background. As Sam noted, my name is David Leonard. I'm the Director of Solutions here at MHC, and I have spent the better part of the last 20+ years listening and working with clients in various capacities. This includes working from the delivery side as a services consultant, a trainer, as well as in the field as a sales representative and a solutions engineer. And this focus has been centered around document and payment automation, and I've developed a level of expertise, if you will, specifically in accounts payable processing, and I will certainly lean on that experience today during our session and how MHC can deliver value in your invoice-to-pay process. On a personal note, I'm an avid pickleball fan and player. It's a sport that has grown extensively in the last number of years. Hoping a lot of you have been introduced to it. It's a wonderful sport, and much like AI, right? It's dominated headlines across the industries around the globe these days. So it's a fun activity, and just a little bit about an extracurricular activity of mine. With that said, let's take a quick look at our agenda today, where I'll take us through a brief discussion on where AI can drive impact within Invoice-to-Pay. As I mentioned, AI continues to evolve and mature, but there are some key areas where organizations can obtain noticeable impact today. And from there, I'll further showcase how AI is applied and leveraged to generate meaningful results, followed by how this ties together in an end-to-end AP automation solution. As Sam noted, you have the Q&A panel to enter questions as we go, and I'll look to address those as we come to the bottom of the hour. So with that said, I'm going to turn off my camera so we could focus on the presentation portion, and let's dive in here. All right, so when discussing Invoice-to-Pay, people immediately think about the various manual tasks involved throughout the invoice lifecycle, and there are certain places within the journey of vendor invoices that AI can drive real impact and decrease the amount of manual intervention. So if we take a moment, it was a couple weeks ago, Mark Brousseau, he's an author, an independent consultant, and an advisor for accounts payable automation. He actually helped host a webinar with us that showcased a survey done by IOFM with AP leaders such as CFOs and controllers and others that revealed 38% identified automated AP manual processes was a top priority for 2024. And then another 37% indicated improving processes as a top priority. So obviously automation is just trying to take out processes altogether and then just improving them to bring more stability and visibility and things like that to the forefront were also key and top of mind with these kind of leaders. We all know that automating the entire process is utopia, or that touchless processing, as they say. And this is achievable, but equally important is making those incremental improvements at the various steps throughout the invoice lifecycle. So where can some of these greatest accounts payable challenges be addressed? Another IOFM benchmark survey highlights data capture as the top automation priority, with invoice approvals a close second. Now, interestingly enough, I reflected to the same survey done 7 years ago by IOFM, and you'll notice the priority of data capture was significantly lower, actually half, right? Now, why is this? I believe that there's been a big transition taking place over the last decade from my experience, where companies have really strived to become more PO compliant, and that's obviously to help mitigate risk, better control of managing finances, optimizing spend, just to name a few things. And it's not uncommon to see organizations at 70, 80, even 90+% PO compliant. And with that comes more emphasis on the matching process, which you'll see in this survey nearly doubled as well over the last 7 years. So they're really kind of intertwined when you think about it. And this is where automation can have a big impact. So with data capture at the top of the list of priorities that we just highlighted a moment ago, right? To automate those processes for these various AP leaders, this is an area where AI can have, like I said, a significant impact. We know one of the common denominators making high data capture rates a challenge is the array of invoice formats to manage across hundreds, if not thousands, of suppliers. So leveraging technology with AI, such as MHC's North Star solution, can significantly automate the process of being able to quickly and easily achieve capturing of the appropriate data elements, from supplier information to the header and footer information, if you will, as well as line details. Now that's key as you get into the PO compliance topic, right? Because then that facilitates, need for PO matching, and this, which we again just identified as one of the other key priorities. So in doing all this, right, this can, if you can achieve all that, it could significantly reduce the manual task of people having to key in manually. And this highlights just one area where AI can have impact, and I'll elaborate on this a little bit more as we go. But we can see here just from the illustration, right? You know how, whether you got, 1,000, 2,000, sometimes 5,000, we've seen even more than that. You get all these different array of formats of vendor invoices coming in. It makes it a challenge, right? And oftentimes companies have AP personnel segmented to certain vendors because they get used to how those formats look, so they can manually and quickly try to key those things in. That's not the most optimal way to process those, so we'll look at how AI can address that a little bit closer. So with that backdrop, like I said, let's dive in and see exactly how AI is utilized and leveraged in this particular process within AP automation. And if we look at one last survey by IOFM as well, right? This reveals that OCR is the most commonly used AP technology being utilized to drive that automation. Interestingly enough, AI is about half of that figure, and this would seem to make sense as OCR has been around for a much longer period of time, but it's not always the most efficient means to extract data. Some people just generally say, "I want to OCR. I want to OCR the data. I want to." Actually, OCR is probably not the most ideal way to extract data, and we're seeing where AI, everywhere we turn in the world these days, and it certainly has worked its way in the AP automation space. Still not widely adopted, but it is no doubt starting to creep in more and more. And this is one key area where a lot of automation can be achieved. And there's no doubt these figures will continue to change and evolve over the coming years. And we'd like to showcase, how MHC leverages both OCR and AI in tandem. It's not an either or, but actually even in tandem as it pertains to data extraction. So when it comes to processing invoices, we can all agree that EDI is really the most efficient means, and I suspect a number of you on this call leverage EDI for a certain percentage of your supplier invoices. It's efficient because there's a standard file format that's digital. So you have high data integrity. You already got pre-built interfaces to get this into your respective Infor ERP system, whichever one you're using, whether say it's Lawson or Cloud Suite, for example. And there's no user intervention that's really required unless, of course, there's exceptions once they get loaded in. Now, for those invoices that are received via email, or more prevalent, which is more prevalent these days, right? We've seen those numbers trend up and up and up. Or you could still be getting good old-fashioned snail mail, which need to be scanned in. That's where people talk about OCR, or optical character recognition technology, to be utilized just as we saw on the prior chart, right? That was what most people were saying are being utilized, that are doing anything today are utilizing. But many OCR solutions will take that source PDF file, even if it comes in via email, and turn it right back into an image file. Now, to you, it looks the same, but actually to the OCR solution, it's different. It actually behaves just as if it were scanned as a paper source document. What that means is that there are actually now the characters, which are what you see on the page, they're actually represented by pixels on the page, and those have to be converted back into characters, and then attempt to capture the key metadata from that standpoint, which this is most commonly done through the creation of templates, or what some refer to as zonal capture or zonal OCR for each supplier format. This is not very efficient. It's very time consuming to set up and maintain, especially if things change. It also results in lower data integrity, which can also then lead to decreased capture success rates. So it's not the most optimal way. It certainly works, but it's not as optimal as it could be. Now, with MHC's intelligent capture solution, the first thing we do is source PDFs. I'm talking about those received, say, via email electronically, or perhaps you've downloaded from portals, right? Is not to extract the data via OCR, rather utilize the digital text layer that's embedded as part of the PDF. Now, why is this important? Because like EDI, it's digital and you maintain high data integrity. It's no question about what you're working with in terms of the characters, because no conversion had to take place of those pixels back into characters. Now, with that said, for those invoices you still receive via paper, we'll still OCR the data. That it has to. There's no other way around it. And we'll actually take that OCR data from the image itself, and then we'll combine that with the digital information. Even if there wasn't a text layer, obviously, we're going to combine that and treat it as if it was, and then we'll actually optimize what we can get captured from that particular invoice. Then utilize an AI and machine learning, the supplier information, the header details, as well as the line item details are automatically extracted from those. There's no need for setting up templates at all. It's just, in addition to capturing of the data, other mechanisms are put in place to perform validation to ensure date fields are really dates. Amount fields are currencies, for example. Line item details, the quantity and unit prices and total line price, total price for that line all add up correctly, right? And this is important for PO invoices when it comes to trying to, because we'll automatically pair those details with the actual corresponding PO lines, all this to facilitate downstream processes. Now, the overall benefit of that, as I go back one more step there, sorry, is that you'll notice that there's no need to create templates. This is a significant savings that you can obtain and not having to manage those ongoing, because with the MHC intelligent capture solution, none of that is required or necessary. There are mechanisms, again, in place to automatically look to capture that data off of the documents. With that said, here's a visual representation as to why working with original source PDF files are superior to scanned PDFs. So even though technologies have gotten better and convert that data into characters, all right, there's no reason to do that for a perfectly good source PDF file from an image back in via OCR. And you'll notice as I zoom in here, what you'll notice is with the text layer from a source PDF file, think of it as just a straight, like a notepad file, or if you will, it's all digital. There's no ambiguity again as to what you're looking at. And as a result of that, this fact that there's no ambiguity to the accuracy of the data that's also being captured on the right, because it's like EDI. Scanned images, on the other hand, such as what you see on the left, they have lower quality due to lower resolution. And this requires converting those dots, as I mentioned, on a page back to characters. So is it a 1 or is it an L? Is it a 0 or an O? Is it an 8 or is it an S? Is it a period or is it a comma? And so on, right? So data integrity is impacted and compromised, which decreases data accuracy, which obviously results in impact in data capture rates, which means more manual intervention. And that is not the case when you work with source PDFs, such as the MHC Intelligent Capture Solution. And then in addition, there's not a reliance on those templates or zonal capture, if you will, to capture that data. And like I highlighted a moment ago, there's a number of mechanisms in place to assess throughout the invoice text layer where to locate and how to find the invoice number, the date, the supplier details, cross-reference that across your vendor master details, identify the line details down to the subtotal, the tax, and the total, and freight charges, etc. Again, all with no reliance on having to set up templates. So as you work with the system, it continues to learn, and this table reflects an analysis that AI combined with machine learning can drive real impact, where over time, should data elements require correction, undoubtedly it's going to happen, it's going to occur. The accuracy rate can increase as invoices pass through the system. Again, no templates are needed, and you can achieve optimization of those capture rates in utilizing this mechanism, thus less time for users to enter data manually. Now, obviously, there are variables that come into the equation that impact overall results, but obtaining 70, 80, 90+% success rates are achievable. Again, as invoices continue to pass through based on the number of elements being captured, obviously this can vary as each pass, especially if you're capturing line details, because you can have some invoices with 2 lines, some with many lines, and so on and so forth, versus expense invoices where you may not have to capture as much detail. But over time, you can see the solution is continually learning from the prior experiences and able to correct by looking at associations of how things are being corrected and the information around that, to be able to know how to accurately capture it on succeeding passes. So that, again, you can see those benefits as you have invoices pass through over time. Now, another part of the process where AI with machine learning can streamline the processes is in the GL coding for, say, expense invoices, right? When these come in, these expense invoices, right, we still see a lot of companies applying the good old stamp to the invoice to be filled out, right? They'll take it, they'll rubber stamp it. I'll kind of blow that up a little bit, and they'll put that on that particular document. Especially, again, if it's printed, I see many emailed invoices come in, and companies just turn right around and print it back out and stamp these things, and then they circulate it around to have the appropriate details filled out, right? So these invoices are mainly then routed around, and then, like I said, personnel write the information on the document. Now, sometimes this gets managed through a series of emails as opposed to a stamp, but still a lot of manual steps of people keying things into through emails. And ultimately, this works its way back to AP to get manually entered into Infor. Not very efficient. Well, with machine learning and North Star, GL distribution details can be automatically applied based on prior entries for a given vendor. This data is automatically then validated against your GL details, so there's no transposing of invalid information. And naturally, routing and approval connected with this step can also cut down on the paper shuffle, hence cut down on time, more efficiencies, and then ultimately you drive down the time to process the invoice as well. So this is another area, and just one of several that I'm touching on today in this short period of time that we have here together, of where AI and machine learning can drive real impact and value. And as I said, these are just several of the examples, but you combine this with many of the other areas where efficiencies can be attained within the solution. The time to process will be faster, which ultimately leads to reduction in costs. And this also allows personnel to work on other value-added tasks. And a byproduct of the automation is scalability. So as your business grows, it doesn't always necessarily require more time, more people, and allow them again to stay focused on other initiatives. Now, those are again just a couple areas that are being highlighted here today. Um, I'd also like to make sure you keep in mind that when you look at a full AP automation solution, there are many other steps in the process that can be streamlined, and those should be considered to ensure that the solution you do put in place addresses all those together. So I'd like to take the opportunity just to kind of quickly showcase and highlight a few of those areas, so you can make sure that these are being looked at when you look at a total end-to-end solution. MHC's Northstar cloud-based solution comprises of both invoice and document automation. I know we're focused on the invoice here today primarily, but Northstar platform is an invoice and document automation solution. There are 5 key pillars in that, what we view as 5 key pillars in the invoice automation life cycle. And we've touched briefly on where AI and machine learning can deliver value in a couple of those, and as we highlighted in the first survey we showed today, we noted improving processes as an additional piece of automation that was top of priority for a lot of those leaders, AP leaders that were part of it. And when you look closely here, when you look at those 5 key pillars, where there's other areas to consider, such as invoice receipt, matching, routing, and approvals. So again, we've touched on intelligent capture and the GL coding and where AI can be an impact in those particular areas. But it's important that those are also complemented. How do we get things quickly and easily from a receipt standpoint, from also facilitating line matching to get that touchless processing, routing around invoices for approval. And all the while making sure that you have essentially what winds up being a digital filing cabinet for all these documents for easy storage and retrieval, address security through permissions, check for things like duplicates, track actions through history, audit and history details for compliance. And then last but not least is also making sure that it's all tied together and integrated nicely within the Infor ERP system to maximize how things get managed, as well as minimize the setup time and ongoing maintenance. If I kind of break this down into just a few of those to touch on these, right, and we'll work towards wrapping up and get to some Q&A. I'll quickly recap where benefits can be obtained throughout the invoice life cycle. When we talked about, like I said, capture a lot in more detail earlier, but there's also streamlining the invoice receipt. No longer do you have to have personnel sit there and manage the inboxes and open them up and print things out or where things need to go. This can just automatically be monitored and also check for duplicates within that process. We touched on automating the GL coding, but leveraging business rules. Invoices can be routed around accordingly to the appropriate personnel based on, say, dollar thresholds. Even when multi-level approvals are needed, that can be accommodated. It includes things like notifications, reminders, escalations. It's all the while meeting the user where they're at, whether it's on a PC or a mobile device. So folks traveling all the time, how do they gain access? They can just as easily be notified through their mobile device, access the invoice, and make the appropriate actions to get that thing processed in an efficient time frame. Now, data insights are critical as well, and through our dashboards, management can obtain a better pulse on the status of invoices. They can identify key trends, perhaps bottlenecks that are occurring in the process, check out user productivity. Therefore, they can be more proactive in their efforts to make adjustments as necessary to improve the overall process. In addition, our experience in integration with Infor systems, both Lawson and Cloud Suite, allows for one-click access to view the images, the invoice images, along with the history details, the audit details, if you will, any potential comments that got added along the way, supporting documents, all that from directly within the ERP system through one click. So there's easy access and a very seamless experience. Now, of course, Invoice-to-Pay does include payments, and MHC's North Star also supports the generation and distribution of an array of various documents, such as AP payments, whether those be the checks or the actual direct deposit statement, or ACH. It could be ACH details. All this along with other documents such as purchase orders, and all these can be linked together with the corresponding invoice, and this creates a nice little digital packet versus having to rely on manually filing into cabinets. So you can have that one-click access not only to the invoice, but any other related documents that will be processed and or stored within North Star. Other documents can also be generated, such as payroll check, direct deposit statements, as I noted, employee, as well as AP tax documents, and there's many others that are also supported. So altogether, a single source cloud-based solution that delivers automation and efficiencies throughout your financial processes. So there's been some questions that have come in as we've been going through this session here today, and I encourage you at this time, as we have the last 4 to 5 minutes here to round out the session. If you have questions, again, just enter those in. I'll look to address those as we go forward. I don't want if I don't get to yours specifically, we can always follow up afterwards. It's important for you to know and understand, right? MHC is very passionate about customer success. It's certainly one of our core values, and we're committed to helping organizations like yours achieve value through our solutions. So altogether, you can take control, take action, and accelerate progress and drive efficiencies. A lot of that's been validated through some of our recent G2 reviews, and you can see that up here on the screen, some of those that we've achieved. And I'll also leave Bridget's contact details up on the screen. If you want to connect and learn more, jot down that detail and information and reach out, and we're happy to continue the conversation. So with that said, I welcome any Q&A to come in at this time, and I'll look to address, like I said, with the few minutes we have left. I've got one question here that has come in. It says, David, what are the expected capture rates one could experience with your solution? So as you saw on that analysis, you saw references to, say, 70%, 80%, 90%. And it will vary, again, based on various criteria or scenarios, right? So the more electronic receipt of invoices you're receiving, so especially those that you're receiving via email, and again, we see a lot of folks getting 70, 80+% by email, then we can maximize the data capture rates by virtue of that, utilizing that text layer, as I mentioned, and through AI and machine learning, get higher capture rates. We've certainly seen quite a number of examples where it's 90+%, again, over a ramp of time as more and more invoices go through. If you're more paper-based, let's say 50% paper and 50% electronic, and in terms of email receipt, then that figure may come down into, say, whether it be 75%, 80%, et cetera, right? Because now you deal with lower data integrity, lower quality of information. So it will vary in that spectrum, but I would tell you that it shouldn't be too uncommon to approach starting to achieve that 80+% capture success. I got another question that's popped in. It says, how long does it take to set up and implement North Star for invoice automation? So the thing I would tell you there is we'd like to frame it as around it's a several month exercise and process, with the methodology that it's not in the contiguous days of every single day something's going on. We got to obviously intermix this within your day-to-day efforts and day jobs, if you will. But we tell customers to kind of look at about a several months, say 3-month window of time frame to get it set up. Run in parallel, for example, do testing, make sure the rules are configured accordingly, and then from that point you can further assess when you want to look to trigger to go live. But kind of estimate in that time frame. Can we implement pieces into our current ERP? So what do you mean, say, by pieces? So obviously, North Star includes the full end-to-end capacity of what's needed in an invoice automation solution, whether from the capture, the receipt, to the capture, to the routing and approval. So can pieces be kind of broken up, if you will? There's certainly things that can not just be utilized, and that's certainly just turn things on or off, as you might say there, but it's leveraging just the components that you may need. So in an indirect way, yes, you can just kind of implement those necessary pieces. Can invoices be routed based on dollar amount? Absolutely. So it's not uncommon that organizations have multiple people who may need to approve. So whether your tiers for certain departments, maybe say $1,000 threshold to 5 to 10 up to, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or some other departments might just be, 2 people altogether, right? So you can set those limits and thresholds accordingly. It's very easy to set up and configure and manage and maintain ongoing, so that it goes through the necessary personnel within your organization. And each one of those approvals obviously gets logged and tracked in the history log, so we adhere to that compliance. So I know we've come to the bottom of the hour. It's a short window of time to kind of try to pack a lot in there. But with that said, welcome the opportunity to meet with you today. One last point of reference here is that if you plan on attending Infor Connect, which is coming up the third week of May 21st and 22nd, please do come by and speak to us. We'll be a host of us there, and we'd love the opportunity to continue the conversation and potentially work to partner with you on a project like this moving forward. Thank you for your time today. Have a great afternoon, and we'll look forward to hopefully speaking to you in the near future.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.